the silent distress. The alien vessel drifted slowly in the endless sea of stars. Its engines were silent, its lights faint, its crew tired and afraid. Once it had been a proud scout ship of the Cathari Union, but now it was broken, a small shadow lost in the void. Power was running low, oxygen levels dropping and food almost gone. The crew sat at their stations with pale eyes, each one thinking the same thought. No one would come for them. For days they had sent distress calls. Every hour they sent the same signal into the dark. Help. Stranded. No power. Coordinates attached. But there was no reply. No sound. Only the empty hum of space. The captain, a thin figure with scarred skin and trembling hands, leaned forward on the console, staring. At the endless silence, he knew the truth. Allies would not answer. Friends would not risk their own ships for a forgotten scout crew. The galaxy had no mercy for the weak. One of the younger officers whispered, "Captain, what if no one hears us?" The captain's jaw tightened. "Then we drift until the void takes us," he said, his voice hard, but his heart heavy. The crew fell silent, each thinking of families they would never see again, worlds they would never return to. Hope was slipping away like sand through an open hand. Hours passed into. Voice of the stars outside never changed, cold and unfeeling. The hum of failing systems was the only sound. Every time the distress beacon lit, the crew's eyes flickered with the smallest hope, and then dimmed again. Even raiders had not come, and some began to wonder if even the pirates had no interest in saving the lost. The navigator, an old alien with gray skin, coughed weakly. "Do you hear it, the silence?" he said. "Silence has a voice of its own, and it is telling us we are already dead." No one replied, because they all felt the same truth pressing down on them. The silence was worse than enemy fire, worse than the cold, worse than hunger. It was the silence of being forgotten. But then, on the third cycle of the beacon, something changed. The console flickered, the static shifted, and a faint signal cut through. It was not clear at first, just a strange tone buried under noise. The communication officer sat up straight, hands shaking as she tuned the receiver. Her eyes widened. "Captain," something answered. The crew froze, every eye turning toward the console. The captain leaned close, his scarred fingers hovering above the controls. "Repeat," he ordered, voice low. "What did you say?" "I said," something answered, the officer whispered. The beacon light blinked, and then a voice, distorted, deep, unlike anything they had heard in generations, came through the speakers. It was calm, steady, and terrifying in its strength. "Your call has been received," the voice said. "Hold position." The crew stared at each other in shock. No Empire spoke like that. No fleet commander spoke with such authority. The voice carried weight, power, history. The captain felt his throat go dry. "Identify yourself," he demanded, though his voice cracked as he spoke. The signal paused, static filled the air, and then the reply came, clear this time. "We are Terran Command," the voice said. "We heard you?" The entire crew froze as if time itself had stopped. Terran. The word alone sent a chill through their bones. Humans, stories had been told. Whispers passed in secret, that humanity had left the galactic stage long ago, driven away by endless wars and betrayal. Some said they had been destroyed. Others said they had vanished into the dark, never to return. No one believed they still existed. Yet here, in the cold silence of deep space, the voice was real. The communication officer's hands trembled as tears filled her eyes. "Captain, it can't be, can it?" she whispered. The captain closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the steady hum of the alien ship around him. When he opened them, he spoke with a heavy voice. "If it is true," he said, "then we are saved." But inside, another thought burned even brighter. If humanity had returned, then the galaxy would never be the same again. The crew sat in silence, hearts pounding, eyes locked on the dark window of the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the emptiness, something was coming. Not just a ship, but a power thought lost. The silence of the void had been broken, and with it, their hopeless waiting had turned into fear, awe, and a strange new hope. The forgotten ones. The alien crew sat frozen around their consoles, hearts pounding as the last words echoed through the speakers. "We are Terran Command. We heard you." The silence that followed felt heavier than the void itself. No one dared breathe too loudly, as if making a sound would break the fragile reality around them. Terran Command. The name alone stirred memories long buried. Memories of war, fire, and whispered legends of the humans. The captain's eyes narrowed, his scarred hand gripping the edge of the console until his claws dug into the metal. He remembered his training days, long before his hair turned white, when instructors told stories of humanity. They were not told with respect, nor admiration, but with fear. The humans had fought everyone, had refused to bend their knee, and when the galaxy tried to erase them, they vanished instead. Gone into the dark, his instructor had once said. Better that way, for the galaxy cannot hold peace while humanity remains. But now, the dark had spoken back. The youngest crew member whispered, "Captain, could it be an old recording, maybe pirates using a trick?" Her voice shook, desperate for a rational answer. The captain shook his head slowly. "No, child, no pirate carries a voice like that," he said, his words heavy with certainty. That tone, that weight, it could only belong to a people who had once stood against empires and broken them. The crew exchanged fearful glances, for they realized something strange. When they thought of rescue, they had imagined allies, or at least scavengers, but not this, never this. The communication officer leaned forward, pressing her trembling hands to her console. "Message repeating," she whispered. "Terran Command, hold position. We are inbound." Her voice cracked on the last word, because no one in the galaxy had heard that phrase in living memory. Inbound human ships did not come inbound. They had been dust, myths, ashes. The navigator, old and gray, coughed weakly, his eyes wet as he stared at the stars. "I told you," he said. "Silence has a voice, and it was waiting to speak their name again." The crew shivered at his words, for they knew he spoke truth in the way only dying men spoke truth. Hours dragged by, slow as centuries. They kept their weak ship steady, though the engines coughed and groaned. Every time the beacon light blinked, they wondered if another fleet would come instead. Raiders, scavengers, or worse, the very empires who had abandoned them. The fear that they had invited death still lingered, but beneath that fear was something else, something none of them dared admit out loud. Hope. The young officer sat with her knees drawn up to her chest, staring at the void through the viewport. She had grown up hearing her grandmother's forbidden stories of the humans who did not bow, of the humans who burned brighter than the suns. Her grandmother would whisper, "If the day comes when you are lost, pray for a human to find you, for only then will you know true salvation." She never believed it. Until now. The captain broke the silence, his voice low and steady. "Crew, remember this moment," he said. "The galaxy may forget us, our union may abandon us, but today, the void itself remembered who rules its silence." The words struck each heart differently, some with fear, others with awe, but none could deny them, because deep down, each one knew that if humans had returned, the galaxy would tremble once more. Suddenly, the scanners flickered. A shadow emerged at the edge of their sensors, massive, slow, deliberate. The crew gasped as the outline grew larger, wider, until the screen barely contained it. It was a warship, unlike any design they had ever seen. No sleek curves of the empires, no fragile wings of the Union. It was raw steel, angles, and power, a predator built to endure. "Impossible," the navigator rasped, his weak voice breaking. "No empire builds ships of that size." The communication officer whispered, "It's them," her words trembling. "Humans." The shadow grew until even the stars seemed to shrink against its bulk. The alien crew felt their throats tighten, their hearts beat like drums. They were staring at the proof of every whispered tale, every forbidden story, every nightmare, turned real. The warship moved with calm grace, as if it had all the time in the universe. It did not need to hurry, did not need to prove itself. Its presence alone was enough. And then, a new voice filled their ship, clear and steady. "This is the Terran warship Aegis," the voice said. "You are under our protection now." The crew gasped. Protection, a word they had not heard in days, weeks, maybe years. They were not forgotten after all, they were not alone. But even as relief washed over them, fear still lingered in their bones. Because if humanity had returned with such power, what would that mean for the rest of the galaxy? The captain exhaled slowly, his breath shaking as he stared at the colossal shape outside. The void had spoken, and it had sent humanity. The forgotten ones had been remembered. But the question remained. At what cost? The human arrival. The alien crew could not look away from the massive shadow outside their viewport. It was not just a ship. It was a force of nature, a reminder that something the galaxy had buried was still alive. The Terran warship moved closer, each slow pulse of its engines shaking the void. No banners, no bright colors, no fragile decorations, only steel and silence. It felt less like a vessel and more like a beast that had been sleeping in the dark. Waiting. The captain stood from his chair, his legs stiff, his voice unsteady. "Open full channel," he ordered. The communication officer obeyed, her hands trembling as the static cleared. Then the voice returned, deep, calm, filled with weight. "This is the Terran warship Aegis. We heard your call." Every crew member froze at the words. They had been ignored by allies, abandoned by their own union. But the humans had answered. The captain took a step closer to the console, his breath caught in his throat. "This is Captain Drahil of the Union scout vessel Cathari Dawn. We are stranded, failing power, low oxygen." His words came out heavy, shame filling his voice. To admit weakness in the galaxy was a death sentence, but here, it was truth. The human voice did not mock, did not threaten. It replied with the same calm tone. "Hold position, your ship will be covered by our shields in 3 minutes." The crew gasped, some letting out tears they had held for days. Shields. They had no more defense. But the humans offered theirs without hesitation. A glow spread across the viewport, faint at first, then stronger, until the alien ship's failing hull was wrapped in light. Systems flickered back to life, stabilizing under protection that was not their own. The youngest officer whispered, "They saved us." Without asking anything. The old navigator coughed and muttered, "Humans never save without reason, child, remember that." His words chilled the crew, for though they felt relief, they also felt the weight of a greater mystery. Why would the humans come back now? Why would they answer a forgotten scout ship? The captain himself wondered, though he kept his face stern. "Terran warship Aegis," he said slowly. "Why would you help us?" There was a long pause, as if the humans considered whether to speak. Then the reply came, steady and sure. "You called for help," the voice said simply, "and we answer." The words were simple, yet they struck the crew like thunder. No empire spoke this way, no council gave aid without contracts, without conditions, without strings tied. But the humans had answered without question. The young officer felt tears on her cheeks. She did not even know why, only that something deep inside her believed those words. Then the sensors screamed, the radar lit with multiple signals, fast, sharp, hostile. The crew stiffened in terror as the captain slammed his hand on the console. "Raiders," he hissed. They must have tracked the distress call. Dozens of pirate vessels streaked through the void, their lights flashing, their weapons armed. The alien crew panicked, knowing they had no power to resist, no chance to fight. The youngest cried, "We are finished." But before the panic could drown them, the human voice returned, colder now, sharper. "This is Aegis. Remain behind our shield line." The alien crew froze, their eyes wide. The Terran warship shifted its position, placing its massive body between the raiders and the broken scout ship. It did not move quickly, did not rush, only steady, like a wall rising from the dark. The raider fleet broadcasted mockery across the channel. "Old prey and broken ships. Their leader sneered. "We'll take your scraps and your bones too." But when the Terran warship appeared fully before them, silence fell on the raider comms. The massive steel predator loomed, railguns glowing, weapons humming with energy unlike anything they had faced. Even pirates who had laughed at death now whispered in fear. Inside the Cathari dawn, the crew could only watch. Their breath caught in their throats as the human ship powered weapons that had not been seen in centuries. The captain whispered, "They are not just protecting us. They are making a statement." The navigator nodded weakly. "The void will not stay silent now. The galaxy will hear this." Then the Terran voice echoed one last time before the storm. "You are under our protection," it said. "Any who move against you will face humanity's answer." The words rolled through the void like a promise. The crew shivered, torn between relief and fear. For the humans had not only returned, they had returned with power, with purpose, and with fire waiting to be unleashed, and the raiders, once confident, now hesitated at the edge of destruction. The alien crew realized they were no longer just survivors drifting in the void. They were witnesses to something far greater. The arrival of humanity, echoes of power. The raider ships circled like vultures in the dark, their weapons glowing faint red as they armed for attack. The alien crew inside the broken scout vessel trembled, their hearts pounding, for they had no chance to escape. But the Terran warship stood between them and death, a wall of black steel that filled the void with its presence. No signal came from the raiders at first, only silence, the kind of silence that comes before violence. The captain of the alien vessel gritted his teeth, his claws digging into the console. "Hold steady," he whispered to his crew, though his voice betrayed his fear. He knew what came next would decide whether they lived or died. The youngest officer sobbed quietly, her voice shaking. "We cannot survive this." The old navigator shook his head, his voice hoarse. "Do not look at them, child, look at the humans." And so they did. Through the viewport, they saw the Terran warship come alive. The hull glowed faint blue as shields pulsed. Massive railgun barrels shifted with precision, and lines of light crawled across the steel body like veins of fire. It was not a ship preparing for battle, it was a predator waking from slumber. A voice boomed across the channel, cold and clear. "This is the Terran warship Aegis. You are ordered to withdraw." The raider fleet responded with cruel laughter, their leader sneering, "One relic ship dares command us." But their laughter faltered when sensors scanned the Aegis. The readings made no sense. Power levels beyond comprehension, weapons arrays they could not identify, shielding thicker than any fortress. The alien crew inside the scout vessel whispered among themselves. "They are not just alive," one said. "They are stronger than the legends claimed." The captain's chest tightened as he realized the truth. The humans had not vanished into ruin. They had vanished into growth, into silence, building weapons and warships far beyond the galaxy's imagination. The raiders opened fire first, bright streams of plasma tearing through the dark. The alien crew flinched, expecting to see the human ship damaged. But instead the blasts scattered harmlessly across the Aegis shields. The warship did not move, did not evade. It stood firm like a mountain against storm winds. Then, with a low hum that grew into a roar, the Aegis returned fire. The railguns lit up, kinetic slugs tearing through space faster than light could catch. The first raider ship exploded instantly, a fireball swallowed by the void. The crew gasped, eyes wide, as 3 more raiders fell before they even had time to scatter. The sound of destruction echoed through the comms, screams, and static mixing. Together, the human voice spoke again, calm as before. "You were warned." The alien crew could not believe what they saw. A single warship against dozens, yet it fought with precision, every strike deadly, every move efficient. There was no waste, no panic, only control. Even the captain of the alien crew, hardened by years of service, felt his heart tremble. "This is not war," he muttered. "This is judgment." The raiders began to retreat, panic flooding their voices. "Pull back, it's a Terran," they screamed. But the Aegis pressed forward, its engines burning like stars, its weapons cutting through raider hulls like knives through paper. The void lit up with fire, wreckage drifting. In silence, in minutes, the fleet that had come with hunger and greed was broken, reduced to scraps floating in the endless dark. Inside the alien scout vessel, the crew sat in stunned silence. They had been moments from death, yet now they were alive, not because of their union, not because of allies, but because of humanity. The youngest officer whispered, "They fight like gods," her eyes wide with awe. The old navigator shook his head slowly. "Not gods, child. Men who remember every betrayal, every battle, and have turned it into steel." The human voice returned, steady, unshaken. "Remain under our shield. More hostiles may come." The alien captain swallowed hard, his mind racing. He wanted to speak, to ask why the humans had saved them, why they had returned now. But no words came, only silence, because he already feared the answer. For if humanity had this kind of power, then their return would not stop here. The crew looked out at the massive warship, its railguns cooling, its engines humming. The glow of wreckage lit its steel frame, casting it like a god of war rising from the ashes. Hope burned in their chests, but so did dread, because they knew the galaxy would soon learn what they had just witnessed. The humans had not only returned, they had returned with fire. Fire in the dark. The wreckage of shattered raider ships drifted through the void, glowing faintly as flames died in silence. The alien crew of the Cathari Dawn sat frozen, their eyes wide as they watched the Terran warship loom over the battlefield. They had seen impossible power, a single ship cutting down dozens as if swatting away flies, and yet they sensed it was not over. The silence that followed was heavy, tense, a silence that promised more blood. The captain of the alien vessel leaned against his chair, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. He had thought death was certain, but now he was not sure if survival was better. For they had called for help and humanity had answered, but what kind of price would follow? Suddenly the sensors lit up again. A sharp alarm echoed through the failing consoles, red lights flashing. The communication officer gasped. Multiple. New signatures inbound. The crew rushed to the screens, their faces pale. Dozens more raider ships emerged from the dark, bigger and faster than the first wave. This was no small band of scavengers. It was an entire fleet. The youngest officer trembled, clutching the edge of her seat. "They brought reinforcements," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We cannot survive this." The captain closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them to stare at the viewport. Outside, the Terran warship remained steady, its hull glowing faintly, weapons charging again. There was no panic in its movements, no fear, only cold readiness. The raider leader's voice echoed across the channel, loud and cruel. "You hide behind an old ghost ship," he sneered at the aliens. "But ghosts bleed, and today we will rip this relic apart." His fleet spread out, surrounding the human warship, weapons primed to strike from every angle. The alien crew felt despair crash down on them. Even a Terran warship could not stand against so many, could it? The human voice answered calmly, cutting through the noise. "This is the Terran warship Aegis," it said. "You have chosen death." The words rolled like thunder through the comms, and then the fire began. The raider fleet unleashed everything at once. Plasma blasts, missiles, ion beams. The void filled with streaks of deadly light. The alien crew screamed, certain no shield could withstand such a storm. Their small vessel shook as waves of energy passed near them. But when the light cleared, the Aegis still stood, its shields blazing like a second sun. Then the Terran warship answered. Railguns roared, hurling slugs faster than sight, each impact tearing raider hulls apart. Plasma arcs danced across the void, burning ships into molten fragments. Missiles streaked from hidden bays, splitting into swarms that hunted their targets with merciless precision. Every strike was final, every attack devastating. The raider fleet began to crumble, ships breaking one after another. The alien crew could only watch, awe and terror mixing in their hearts. The youngest officer whispered, "They fight, like they were born for this." The navigator nodded, his old eyes wet. No, they fight like they never forgot. The captain gripped his console, realizing the truth. This was not simply a rescue, this was a warning to the entire galaxy. The raider leader screamed over comms, his voice frantic. Fall back, it's humanity, it's humanity. His words spread panic through his fleet, but retreat came too late. The Aegis surged forward, tearing through their formation like a blade through cloth. Its guns fired in rhythm, a storm of steel and fire that drowned the void. The alien scout vessel shook as shockwaves passed around them. Through the viewport, they saw raider ships explode in chains of fire. The dark emptiness lit up with flashes brighter than suns. The crew sat speechless, their fear swallowed by awe. No one had believed the humans still existed, let alone that they could wield such power. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. When the last raider ship fell silent, only wreckage remained, drifting quietly. The void was calm again, but the silence felt different now. It was no longer the silence of death, but the silence after judgment. The Terran voice returned, steady as stone. Your distress call has been answered, it said. You are safe, safe. The word echoed in their hearts, but none of them truly felt it, because they knew what they had just seen would not remain hidden. The galaxy would learn of this, the galaxy would fear it, and nothing would ever be the same again. The captain lowered his head, his voice a whisper. Humanity has returned. The crew sat in silence, the glow of the Terran warship casting shadows across their faces. They were alive, yes, but they were also witnesses. Witnesses to the fire in the dark. The judgment of humanity. The void was quiet again, but it was not the same silence as before. This silence was heavy, filled with fear and awe. The wreckage of raider ships drifted like broken bones across the stars, glowing faintly as they burned away. And in the middle of it all, the Terran warship Aegis stood untouched, black steel shining in the light of fire. Inside, the alien scout vessel. The crew could hardly breathe. Their ship had been saved, their lives spared, but their hearts carried a new weight. They were no longer only survivors. They were witnesses. Witnesses to something the galaxy had long forgotten, or tried to forget. The Terran voice came again, steady and calm. Union vessel, your coordinates are secure under our protection, it said. But know this, your call was not only heard by us. The captain of the alien crew, his scarred hands trembling, leaned toward the console. What do you mean? He asked, though fear already burned in his chest. The reply came like thunder. Others ignored you. Others chose silence. Others left you to die, the human said. But humanity does not forget what it means to be abandoned, we remember. The words cut through the alien crew like blades, because they all knew it was true. Their union had cast them aside, their allies had turned away, and yet it was the humans, the ones exiled from history, who had answered. The youngest officer spoke in a whisper, her eyes wet. Captain, they are not like the others. The old navigator coughed, his voice weak but sharp. They were never like the others, that is why the galaxy feared them. The captain swallowed hard, his mind racing. He remembered the stories told in military schools, how the humans had fought wars not for conquest but for survival, how they had stood against empires far stronger and refused to kneel, and how when the galaxy tried to erase them they had disappeared into the void. But now they were here, not as shadows, not as myths, but as judgment. The Terran voice spoke again, colder this time. We did not come to beg for a place among the stars, it said. We did not come to bow to councils or unions. The alien crew held their breath, their hearts pounding in terror and awe. The voice grew sharper, filled with fire. We came because when a call for help is sent into the void, humanity answers. We came to remind the galaxy of that truth. The crew shivered, for they knew this was more than rescue. It was declaration. The galaxy would hear of this, and it would tremble. The young officer's voice cracked. Captain, do you hear them? They are not just saving us, they are announcing themselves. The captain nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the black warship outside. Yes, he whispered, and the galaxy will not be ready. The raider wreckage floated like silent warnings. Other ships would find the debris. Other ears would catch the echoes of battle. News would spread fast, faster than light, faster than truth could be buried. And with every whisper, one truth would be spoken. Humanity had returned. The Terran warship shifted, engines glowing, weapons still armed. Then a new signal cut across the channel, sharp and commanding. "This is Captain Ardent of the Terran warship Aegis," the voice declared. "You have seen our fire. You have seen our shield. You have seen that humanity has not perished." The alien crew sat frozen, every word sinking deep into their bones. The human captain continued, his tone like iron. "Remember this. Tell your union. Tell your councils. Tell your enemies," he said. "Humanity was silent but not gone. We were watching, waiting, building. And now, the silence is over." The alien crew could not respond, their throats dry, their hearts racing. They knew these words were not meant only for them. This was a message to the galaxy itself. A judgment passed not with words alone, but with the fire and steel they had just unleashed. The youngest officer whispered, her voice breaking. "Captain, what happens now?" The alien captain lowered his head, his voice heavy. "Now," he said, "the galaxy remembers its greatest fear." The Terran warship turned slowly, the wreckage of its enemies drifting behind like shadows. Its engines flared, carrying it deeper into the void, but before it left, one final message echoed through the alien vessel. "Stand ready," the human captain said. "This is only the beginning." And then the channel closed, leaving only silence. But it was not the silence of being forgotten. It was the silence after a storm. The crew of the Cathari Dawn sat in stillness, their eyes locked on the stars where the Terran warship vanished. They knew they had been saved, but more than that, they knew they had witnessed history. The judgment of humanity had begun. The return of Earth. The alien vessel drifted quietly in the shadow of wreckage. The fires of the raider fleet had gone cold, leaving only broken metal and scattered light across the void. And yet, the silence that followed was not peace. It was a silence that carried weight, a silence that carried the name of humanity. Inside the Cathari Dawn, the crew sat stunned, their eyes fixed on the empty stars where the Terran warship had vanished. They had been saved, yes, but more than that. They had been changed. The youngest officer still trembled, her hands pressed against her chest. "They were real," she whispered. "Not stories, not shadows, they were real." The navigator, old and gray, closed his eyes and nodded slowly. "I told you the void had a voice," he muttered. "And today, it spoke, with theirs." The captain leaned against his chair, his scarred face pale in the dim light. He had lived through battles, betrayals, endless silences from his own union. But nothing had shaken him like the sight of that Terran warship. Nothing had burned into his soul like those words. "This is only the beginning." The crew tried to work, tried to restore power to their vessel, but their minds kept drifting back to what they had seen. Every railgun strike, every blast of fire, every word from the Terran captain echoed inside them. They were alive because of humanity, and that truth would never leave them. Then the console beeped once more. A new message burned across the screen, sealed with codes they had never seen before. The communication officer gasped. "Captain, it's from them," she whispered. The crew held their breath as the message opened. A voice, steady and calm, filled their ship one last time. "Union vessel," the human said. "You will deliver this message to your people." The crew exchanged fearful glances, their throats dry. The captain steadied himself, leaning forward as the words continued. "Tell them humanity has returned," the voice said. "Tell them Earth still stands, stronger than ever. Tell them the silence of the void is broken, and the fire of mankind burns again." The voice grew sharper, filled with iron. "Tell them the time of forgetting is over, the time of hiding is over, the time of judgment has come." The message ended, and with it the console went dark. For a moment no one spoke, no one even breathed. The crew knew they carried something far heavier than their own survival. They carried a declaration that would shake the stars. The youngest officer wiped her tears, her voice small but fierce. "Captain, we must tell them, we must." The navigator coughed, shaking his head. "When you tell them, child, remember this. Hope and fear are the same coin, and humanity has placed both in your hands." The captain stared out the viewport, his jaw tight. "Yes," he said softly. "The galaxy will hear, and it will tremble." Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, cold and timeless, but somewhere in that vastness, the humans were moving, building, rising. The Terran warship had vanished into the void, but its presence lingered like a scar across the sky. It was not just rescue, not just mercy, it was a warning, a promise that Earth was no longer silent. The alien crew finally restored partial power, their engines weak but functional. The captain set a course for Union space, his voice steady. "Prepare the message," he ordered. "The galaxy must know what we saw." The crew obeyed, though their hearts were heavy, for they knew the message they carried would not bring comfort, it would bring fire. As the Cathari dawn turned toward distant stars, the youngest officer looked back one last time. She thought she saw the faint outline of steel in the shadows, watching, waiting. A chill ran through her body, but she did not look away. She whispered to herself, "They are out there still. They are always out there." The captain placed his hand on the console. Closing his eyes for a moment, he thought of the words again. This is only the beginning, and he knew they were true. For today, humanity had returned. And tomorrow, the galaxy would learn what that truly meant. The stars gleamed cold and distant, but for the first time in centuries, their light carried a new fear, a new hope. The return of Earth was no longer a myth. It was a truth written in fire and steel, and the galaxy would never be the same again.